Hey, Happy Friday. This week, Samsung brought its web browser to Windows. The company also magically turned its chip business around, and we also got a humanoid robot. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video is sponsored by Saley. Okay, for my first story of the week, Samsung has finally brought its web browser called Samsung Internet from Android over to Windows now. And it's not just for Samsung laptops, but theoretically any PC. To try the beta, all you have to officially do is be in the US or in Korea to sign up, though if you Google hard enough you can also find the installer for it anyway. Now I did try to launch that on both a Snapdragon and an Intel PC since both are supported, but while the installation itself went fine, the app didn't actually launch on either when I clicked its icon, so I don't know. That's what you get with a beta, I guess. Anyway, of course the browser syncs with Samsung Internet and passwords and stuff on your phone, plus it's also based on Chromium, so it should feel very familiar. Sam Mobile has also shown us that you can import bookmarks from all the other browsers. It has an ad blocker built in and also something called Browsing Assist, which is a Galaxy AI-powered feature that offers website summaries and translations. Now, you might remember that I talked about Samsung Internet coming to Windows in December of 2023, and it apparently took the company 2 whole years to make that happen. I actually know quite a few people who really like using Samsung Internet on their phones, and so having the ability to sync all of their stuff over to the desktop as well, I think is going to make them happy. Okay, and for my second story of the week now, it looks like Samsung's chip business is miraculously doing really well now. The biggest news this week, as the generally reliable Korea Herald has put it, is that Samsung's chip foundry business, which has been deeply unprofitable, is making a proper turnaround with big orders from Tesla, Apple, and Nintendo. They even claim that the foundry is now expected to be profitable again by 2027. Tesla, of course, moved a massive AI chip order over to Samsung. The Nvidia chips powering the Nintendo Switch 2 are apparently made by the Korean giant as well, and Samsung has also begun joint development of a next-generation image sensors with Apple in their Texas facility. Meanwhile, for phones, Samsung has basically confirmed that depending on the region, the Exynos 2600 will return to power some of the Galaxy S26 series phones again after getting major upgrades, while we've also recently heard that Qualcomm is testing a version of their Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy Edition using Samsung's 2nm Foundry process too. Add to this that Samsung also finally got its memory business out of a deep hole by building high bandwidth memory that the likes of Nvidia are finally willing to buy, and it feels like quite an amazing set of wins for the Koreans after many years of struggle. Unsurprisingly, their stock is up something like 70% over the last 6 months. Wow. Okay, and for my third story of the week, a company called 1X has released a brand new humanoid robot called Neo. It is designed to perform domestic tasks, and regular people could actually own it as soon as next year. Well, people who can afford to spend $20,000 or like $500 a month on a domestic robot, but actually that's maybe not as expensive as I would have thought. The launch video shows Neo doing a wide range of tasks like folding laundry or tidying up. Sadly, of these demos, the only ones that the robot actually did by itself autonomously is walking to the door and opening it, and then also fetching a drink from a person to the kitchen. Both of those features only really require the robot to essentially walk and then do very simple manipulation of simple objects with a single hand, so I would expect that those would be some of the easiest tasks the robot could potentially do. Meanwhile, literally everything else in the video was, at least for now, done by a human remote controlling the robot. And meanwhile, in a video with the Wall Street Journal, they actually showed Joanna Stern what that looks like in person. Now, this does make sense to a degree because everything else in the house is basically custom. Every plate, every dishwasher, every cupboard is different in every house, so the company needs the robot to practice a lot before it can be generalized to everything. And so while they're not saying it this way, they're essentially asking for early adopters to buy Neo and then pay the company to train their robot in their own home. I think the company could have been a little bit more upfront about that, but if you don't mind that, and you also don't mind, a human operator essentially walking around looking at stuff in your home every now and then, I think that's fine. I think the robot actually looks pretty cool. It's a promising technology. Now, will the robot overheat? Will it be creepy to have a person around? Will it knock over your TV accidentally? Will it matter that the robot is not actually water resistant? We don't know any of those things, so definitely wait for the reviews. And moving on to our release monitor, we start with the robot vacuum company Dreamy announcing that it's making smart rings now, because why not? What's new is that the ring can apparently vibrate and has touch input on top of the usual health tracking stuff as well, and Dreamy says that they also want to start making phones, drones, cars, and even asteroid mining equipment, so that's cool. And talking of brands doing everything, DJI this week released their flagship €1,700 Romo P robot vacuum outside of China, and this machine is all about that bling. The transparent design on both the base and the vacuum itself looks very cool in person, plus the robot has all the usual high-end features like self-cleaning mops, telescoping arms, and also some advanced mapping technologies to avoid objects. In my quick testing, it actually cleaned really well, though sadly it also got tangled in all of my thin and light carpets, just like any of the other robot vacuums that I've tried. Oh well. Next, Insta360 this week launched the X4 Air. There's nothing much to say here other than it's a thinner and lighter and cheaper version of their company's flagship line, and it starts at $400. And talking of cheaper, the Nothing Phone 3a Lite has also launched with a glyph that is now just a simple LED and budget specs that match its €249 price tag. Sadly, there isn't any US availability just yet, but the phone also comes with Meta apps that can't be uninstalled, and also lock screen ads. Ew, but at least those can be turned off. That is a really weird move for a brand that relentlessly made fun of other brands like Samsung for supposedly pre-installing bloatware on their devices. Anyway, meanwhile, OnePlus has launched their new flagship called the 15 in China. It focuses on some fancy fit and finish and very thin bezels, plus there's also a 7,300 mAh battery, but sadly the camera sensors actually got smaller and also dropped the Hasselblad branding, so I wonder if they'll actually be a downgrade. A global launch for OnePlus is only expected in a couple of weeks, but the links for everything else is in the description as usual. Now, as for a brief, we'll start with Qualcomm, who's now making AI server chips. You can buy a whole rack with them, and I literally can't be bothered to read anything else about these, so let's move on. In similar news, Nvidia has invested $1 billion into Nokia to move some of the Finnish telecom giant's infrastructure over to Big Green's chips. And as you would expect, the stonks have been stonking very hard since. Just as everyone was starting to wonder whether we might be in an AI bubble. But then continuing with the bubbly stuff, OpenAI has just completed its for-profit restructuring. In their blog post, the company says that they are now, quote, built to benefit everyone, which is definitely why companies usually turn themselves into for-profits. You just gotta narrow the definition of everyone to everyone who owns OpenAI stock. It's that easy. Anyway, Microsoft now owns 27% of the entity, and the two will continue to collaborate, but they will also date other providers on the side. Then, in gadget news, Samsung has officially shown off its first trifold device, which people like Ice Universe managed to get a few photos of. And the company says it still expects it to launch this year. And I gotta say, even as a massive fan of foldables, I kind of feel like trifolds are maybe just a step too far. I think it might be a little bit too niche, but let's see how this goes. Next, in very unexpected news this week, Proton somehow lost its mind and started its Black Friday discounts this week, a month early, and they'll also extend them until the 5th of January. 2.5 months? That's how long Black Friday lasts now? Okay. And moving on, the trade war between the US and China is apparently taking a one-year break as the two sides have agreed to dial things down a bit. Important for techies is that the tariffs on Chinese imports have been moved from 55% to 45% and have importantly avoided the over 100% rates that Trump was threatening earlier. Plus, Trump also said that, quote, all the rare earth has been settled. Okay. While the US also appears to have backtracked from their export ban on stuff made with US software. Now, 45% is still pretty high, and of course there's no guarantee that this truce will actually last a full year, but good. And then moving on, Affinity, the app maker that I and many others have replaced Adobe with, launched this. It's a new single app that combines their vector, pixel, and layout apps, and also what else but AI from the new parent company, Canva. The app is bizarrely free, and in my quick testing has more or less the same features as their paid apps had before it. I mean, you might have to pay a subscription if you wanted to use some of their advanced AI features, which I don't, and I'm still just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, there's apparently no ads in there, there's no extra tracking, they're not using your images to train AI or anything. I'm suspicious. But then in good news, Bloomberg reported this week that Apple plans to give the MacBook Air, the iPad Air, and the iPad mini display upgrades in the form of OLED. These would follow the MacBook Pro, all of which is very exciting, though the upgrades would apparently cost $100 extra. And then in platform news, YouTube announced that they'll start using AI to upscale videos. You will get something called super resolution on videos that are below 1080p, and in the future, YouTube wants to support resolutions up to 4K. Creators can apparently opt out of their videos being upscaled, but viewers can only do so by selecting the right quality setting. Let's see how good or annoying this actually is. Now, you might remember that I recently visited Intel's factory in Arizona, and I have a very exciting visit coming up for Asia next, and whenever I travel, my favorite tool these days is Saily. Saily is an eSIM provider that lets you almost immediately get online when you're abroad. I've used them in the US, in China, in Thailand, in Malaysia, and more, and I really wouldn't want to travel without it anymore. You can buy eSIMs for individual countries before you even travel, and they recently also added the option to buy eSIMs for whole regions. A road trip across Asia might call for their eSIM that works across 19 different countries there, such as Thailand and Japan. Meanwhile, other options are Latin America and Africa, for example, and there's also a global eSIM that gives you a single data plan for $120. 21 different countries. I love the flexibility of arriving and just flicking a few switches on my phone instead of having to hunt down dodgy airport Wi-Fi or buying a physical SIM from a weird kiosk or something. And with Saily, you get precise control over how many gigs of data you want, how long your plan should last, and more, and all the prices are extremely fair. Thailand, for example, starts at just $2.99, and applying my code FridayCheckout even gets you 15% off of those already very reasonable prices. So go to saily.com/FridayCheckout or scan the QR code on screen and enter the code FridayCheckout when you get an eSIM for 15% off. Happy travels, and I'll see you next Friday.